You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hi everybody and welcome to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class. With me, your sniffling host, Katie Charlwood, terrible patient and reader of books. If I sound a little bit different, it's not only hoarse, but I seem to have caught the common cold, which is the first time I've ever been common in my life. No, that was a shit joke. That was terrible. I did my wee PCR test. It came back negative, so I do not have the COVID. I'm just sick. And I feel like I have been punched right in the face. I've got sinus headaches and it's just, ugh. But you know what? I'm going to start with some good news today. I came home the other day to presents. Marissa? You know what? I'm going to say both of those names because I'm hoping one of them is the correct pronunciation. I came home to 2 books from my Amazon wishlist and I want to say thank you so much. I use these for research. Well, most of the books on my wish list are for research. Some of them are just stuff that interests me, which can sometimes lead to more research, but isn't that the way it should be? Like, I was struggling to figure out what I was going to talk about this week. Like, I had no clue, because I'm like, do I want to do something festive, or do I want to save some festive stuff for later on? And are there really any interesting festive stories? And I was just kind of not feeling it. I wasn't feeling it. And then I came across Grigori Rasputin, who I swear to God is far more interesting than her father ever was. And you're thinking, really? How can she be more interesting than the mad monk? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'll tell you. But first, I want to thank everybody who has been messaging me and DMing me and rating and reviewing 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And for everyone who's been listening on Spotify, I was actually able to check my Spotify Wrapped this year, like as a podcaster. And you guys, I love you. I really do. You have no idea how much your support really means. Oh, and if you are on my Patreon, expect bonus episodes coming next week. They're coming next week because I'm too sick this week to do it, and also I've got my kids this week, so that's a next week problem. But yeah, if you want to support me, if you think, oh, rating and reviewing just isn't enough, I need to do more, you can follow me and interact with me on social media. I'm on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I really should do more with Facebook. And some other stuff's coming. You can also join my Patreon, which has bonus stuff coming. There's more stuff coming soon, just because I was busy. And you're going to see some exclusive stuff. I'm very excited, actually, about that. And also, if you just want to send some research money, book money, if you want to send book money, you can always send something to the PayPal, whodidwhatnowpod@gmail.com, or you can just click the link down below in the show notes. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, quit your jibber jabber, infact me. Infact you, I will. But first, we've got to get our source on. So, we have My Father by Grigori Rasputin, The Rasputin File by Edward Radzinski, Prelude to the Revolution, The Murder of Rasputin by Ronald C. Moe, and Rasputin, The Untold Story by Joseph Fuhrman. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? Matriona. Oh, I should also apologise straight away. If I pronounce things incorrectly, I am trying my best. And I would like to hopefully use the excuse of the fact that I'm all sinusy. But please don't be too mean to me. Considering the only thing I can say in Russian is, I can say dilubya. But the only sentence I can say is Ty svinya, unenavizha tibya. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong anyway, so. Matriona Grigorievna Rasputina was born on the 27th of March 1898. Not 1899, which actually says on her tombstone, but 1898. For years they thought it was, a year later. But when the fall of the USSR, the Soviet Union, a lot of Russian records were opened up, they were unsealed, and it had her birth date. So now we know. So yeah, she was born in this peasant village in Siberia to Grigori Rasputin and his wife, Praskovia Fyodorovna Dubrovina. So yeah, she's from this wee village, Pokrovskoy. I feel like I've pronounced that really wrong. In September 1910, she went to Kazan and then on to St. Petersburg. She would have been about 12-ish, 13-ish, around about that time, and changed her name from Matryona to Maria to make her upwardly mobile. Because her name would have been quite a peasanty name, to be honest, kind of peasanty, because she had social aspirations, she needed to make her name more befitting that. So Maria and her wee sister Varvara, they go along with Rasputin to St. Petersburg so he can make them little ladies, to give them a better chance at life, etiquette, all that jazz, all the stuff that, women would have needed at that time. Cough, cough. So they were refused entry to the Smolny Institute, which was fun fact, was established by Catherine the Great as a way of providing formal education for girls. So they don't get in there. And they end up going to the Stepan-Kamensky private prep school in 1913. So she would have been about 15-ish, I think, 14, 15, that's it. So things are going all right in St. Petersburg. They're trying to climb the social ladder. Things are going not so bad. You see, in the summer of 1914, a woman believing Grigori Rasputin to be the Antichrist tries to assassinate him. And she did it by stabbing a knife through his abdomen. And this event, basically, this attack, really ignites a change in Grigori Rasputin. And his behaviour, it's like a flip switches, and with someone, quite a lot of people who deal with trauma, he turns to alcohol. Specifically, dessert wines, which have a really fucking high alcohol content. And the other thing that people who suffer trauma also do, he really leans into religion. So he gets well into the Russian Orthodox, really into this faith. He's learning all about magnetism and its uses in the human body. And this becomes the base, the foundation or whatever, for his healing hands and his magic healing skills, his mysticism and shit. See, Rasputin is always known as the Mad Monk, but he wasn't even seen as a monk at the time. He was seen as a starret or something? Starret? Basically a pilgrim thing. He was just a mystic, a pilgrim, a healer, not necessarily a monk. I think that's more based on attire, really, clothing, but okay. So, because he's hanging out with the Romanovs, and he seems to be the only one that can cure wee Alexei. So, Alexei is he's the son of the Tsar Nicholas II, and he's a haemophiliac, and he's got a bunch of stuff wrong with him. He has shakes and other kind of stuff, and Rasputin is the only one who can calm him the fuck down and ease him and relax him and stop his bleeding somehow. But yep, okay, you know what, that was pretty dismissive. No, seriously, Alexei, he had this condition called haemophilia, which was known as the royal disease, because he had inherited it from Queen Victoria, who was effectively the grandmother of all the royalty in Europe. He had it pretty severe, in fairness. So to the point where he actually had 2 Navy officers sort of around him at all times, basically taking care of him and making sure he didn't injure himself, because if he got an internal hemorrhage of any kind, it literally could be basically the end for him. And at one point it almost was. This very scenario happened, and they thought he was going to die until Rasputin entered and basically healed him somehow. The swelling went down, the fever went away, he stopped fucking screaming. Because there was this whole secrecy thing, Alexei's condition was very much kept shtum, that, it wasn't really brought up. So we don't really have records of how Rasputin managed to heal Alexei or what exactly he was healing him from. We only have snippets here and there. So Rasputin, because of his healing hands and shit, he becomes this fucking sensation in Russia. And because he's the only person that can really deal with Alexei, he becomes incredibly close to the Tsar and the Tsarina. Effectively, he's part of the furniture, and because he is, so is his daughter Maria, who's pretty close in age to the rest of the Tsars, the rest of the Romanov girls. So Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, they're all kind of about the same age. They're all, teens. Maria described them as elegant but cloistered. So they didn't really have access to anything out with the palace walls. So Maria was this fascinating beacon of information. She had all this information and she could tell them about the world and all this other stuff that is without their blinkers on, Unfortunately, this closeness with the Romanovs really created sort of a discontent. Pissed people off, to be honest, because they assumed that this quote-unquote mad monk was whispering in the ear of the Tsar and he was influencing matters of state and shit. Oh, and also he was a filthy whore, apparently. Anywho, so, quelle surprise, a bunch of aristocrats say fuck this for a game of soldiers, and they decide to assassinate Rasputin. So this is his second assassination. Well, attempt slash. This is the second time someone tries to assassinate him, which turns out to be a rather difficult task. So he gets stabbed and poisoned and shot and then thrown into a river. And it's only when he is thrown into the icy Neva River that he drowns and dies. And here's the thing, and it's Maria who has to identify the body of her father via a galosh that was stuck to the bridge from which the killer had supposedly thrown him off of. For a wee while after that, Maria and her sister Varvara, they're still staying in the palace with the Romanovs. But Empress Alexandra, the Tsarina, she can really see that shit is going down. And so she gives the two young Rasputin girls 50,000 rubles and tells them to get the fuck out of Dodge. She tells them they're going to be imprisoned, shit's going down, they better just get out and save themselves. Being, smart girls, they absolutely listen to what Alexandra says and they flee with the help of Boris Soloviev, who is a fucking arsehole because he tries to cash in on the missing Romanov thing by hiring girls to pretend to be Anastasia. The whole myth about her still being alive. Dick move. So Maria, she marries Boris and I'm not going to say that. Soloviev, she marries him, and they have two daughters, and who they name Tatiana and Maria.
Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Named after the Grand Duchesses, her friends. So they flee to Europe, And this is all that's left for Maria in her life. She has her 2 daughters and she has Soloviev. Her mum and her mother and brother disappear in the Soviet labor camps, the fucking gulags in Siberia. And her sister dies under mysterious circumstances. So some say she starved to death, others say that she was poisoned. We're not entirely sure, but we'll look at that into again. So in 1926, Boris Soloviev dies of tuberculosis, or consumption as it would have been known back then. And she has to find a way to support herself and her 2 daughters. There's no widow's pension or shit back then. And she uses the only thing she has to her advantage. Her name. So, although not a dancer by any stretch of the imagination, because she's got a very famous name, which is incredibly rare in the area, she gets a job dancing in a cabaret. Because she's like, yes, money please. Because, she's got fucking mouths to feed. And she ends up taking dance lessons and shit to sort of hone her performance. And she's in this act where people are dressed up as her father and his murderers, and they reenact the murder of her dad in front of her. That just seems like poor taste regardless of what era you're in, you know what I mean? Anyway, she says fuck this for a game of soldiers and literally runs away to join a circus. So yeah, she's part of a travelling circus going through Europe, basically cashing in all her chips, using her last name to her advantage. Basically using the Rasputin name to get as many gigs as she fucking can. And you know what? Good for her. And while she's at the circus, she trains to become a lion tamer. Now, this is very much it was a different time then. She becomes a fucking sensation. And she very cleverly bills herself as performing magic over wild beasts, just as her father dominated men. The other way she billed herself was the daughter of the famous mad monk whose feats in Russia astonished the world. Yes, use everything to your advantage. You may as well. So, when she's in the circus, when she's doing shit with the animals, she gets asked are you not scared of being in a cage? To which she responds, why not? I have been in a cage with Bolsheviks. So, the circus trip goes to America. So she's in the States, they're travelling around, and here's what happens. So, the circus is travelling around the US, and Maria gets mauled by a fucking bear in 1935. But even so, she stays with the circus until it gets to Miami, and then she just quits, because fair enough. And Maria at this point is very aware of what grumblings can lead to, of the horror of war. So by 1938, World War II is in full swing, and she's trying to get her daughters over to the States and out of Europe. But both of her daughters are denied entry to the US, and Maria is ordered to leave the country within 90 days. Customs are like, get the fuck out. Being a smart cookie that she is, Maria marries a childhood friend of hers, Grigori Rasputin. She knew Bernardsky because he was a former member of the White Russian Army, and in a crazy random happenstance, they had bumped into each other. Even though their marriage didn't last, she was able to become a US citizen after they divorced. So yes, World War II is in full swing, and she does her duty. She becomes a riveter, like Rosie the Riveter, but yeah, anyway. And she stays, doing factory work until about 1955, which is when, the Red Scare is really building. So, basically, a lot of Western countries were really terrified of communism, to the point where, not just communism, Marxism, Leninism, communism, socialism, the whole thing, everything. They put it all under one blanket, and as such, they were like, oh, yeah, actually, And so, they were accusing Maria Rasputin of being a communist, which really fucking pissed her off, because it was the Bolsheviks and the whole communism thing, which is the reason that her friends were murdered, that her mother and brother were killed, and that she had to flee her home. This woman may have been a lot of things, but she was not a fucking communist. So, Maria retires and moves to LA, surviving on social security benefits, teaching Russian, and babysitting. And she did do like a couple of interviews and stuff. She claims to be a psychic, and this is glorious. She says that she's a psychic and that Betty Ford spoke to her in a dream. The other thing she does is she writes a bunch of books about her father. So she says that when she was writing books, when she wrote these books about her dad, that it wasn't for her to make money, it was so she could clear her father's name. And when you read these books, you can really see that. You can see that everything is painted with pure, I don't want to say optimism, but like rose-tinted glasses. It really paints her father as a complete, more of a saint, effectively. But yeah, he may not have been a magical, evil, whispery man, but he wasn't a saint. So when she writes her last book, Rasputin, the Man Behind the Myth, in 1977, and she fills it with her own memories and, diary entries and basically her time living in Russia. But lots of people just really weren't convinced. They thought she was bullshitting because, especially around this time, lots of people had been coming forward stating that they were like one of the missing Romanovs, usually Anastasia. But it wasn't just the Romanovs that people were pretending to be. A bunch of people came forward pretending to be the heir of Rasputin. Now, this was kind of easy to do at the time because no one was really sure how many children he had. At least now that all the records are unsealed, we can see them. The researchers were able to find this information. And on the 27th of September 1977, Maria Rasputin passes away from natural causes. And so ends the story of Maria Rasputin. So what have we learned today? That sometimes the more fascinating people use everything you can to your advantage, especially if you're in a situation that puts you on a lower rung. If you need to step up that ladder, if you need to get up those stairs, you hold on to the handrail. You do what you can. And this kind of goes for everything. You should be able to utilise all the cards in your deck. And not just because, I'm not saying I know we have a habit of being like, oh, I don't want to ask them, or I don't want to, I'm really bad for that, actually. I'm really bad at promoting myself. I'm fucking worst at promoting myself because I don't want to bother people. I feel like it's a bother, I feel like it's and I need to get out of that headspace. It's no, you should be able to message these people in these positions and go, hey, want to share this? Or hey, I have an idea for you. Do you want to do that? But I just don't want to be a dick. If you have a skill or if you have a route that is open to you, unless you're a straight white rich man, in which case use that to help other people, because fuck you and your privilege. Anyway, that is what we've learned today. So it is recommendation time, and we are going to recommend I am going to recommend listening. I think you should listen to the song Rasputin by Boney M, which his great-grandchildren could have been dancing to that. That's all I'm saying. And watching, I am a cheesy Christmas movie watcher. I will watch all of them all of the time. There's one on Netflix called Single All the Way. I recommend it absolutely 100%. So, reading wise, you know what? Read your Christmas list, and if there isn't a donation to somebody on it, if you can afford it, donate to something. A wee $5 or something if you have it. Donate to a charity. Donate to somebody who needs it. And I really need to blow my nose now. I'm getting really, really nasally. So I'm gonna wish you farewell, and I shall say goodbye. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Bye-bye.